Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The air in the Darkhold prison cell was thick, reeking of machine oil and sweat. Kalia Vren, the last scientist of the Stellar Alliance, slumped against the icy metal wall, her wrists bound by faintly glowing green energy cuffs. Her once proud flight suit was now tattered, stained with dried blood. The silver hair, a hallmark of her Zoran heritage, clung to her forehead in matted strands, but her violet eyes burned with defiance. 5 days of captivity, 5 days of torture at the hands of the Umbra Corporation's nameless enforcers, the Empire strangling the galaxy. Her body ached, but every breath was a reminder she could not break. A shadowed figure entered, clad in glossy black armor that swallowed the dim light from the ceiling bulb. Commander Varkis, head of Umbra's interrogation team, loomed over Kalia, his face hidden behind a red-tinted visor. "The Firemind Code, Dr. Vren," he said. "It's in your head. Hand it over, and this gets easier." Kalia's lips curled into a bitter smirk. She spat a glob of blood onto the floor, forcing her spine straight despite her body's protests. "You think Umbra can break me? You don't know a damn thing about Zorans, or humans, the ones who taught me to stand tall." Varkis tilted his head, like he was studying a broken toy. "Humans," he repeated, his words dripping with contempt. "Weak, arrogant creatures who think they can defy Umbra." He drew a neural disruptor from his belt, its blue light casting stark shadows across Kalia's pearl-white skin, highlighting her bruises. 5 days, Doctor. You're stubborn, but we have time." Kalia gritted her teeth, bracing for the pain. 5 days of torment, electric shocks coursing through her, needles pumping drugs that clouded her mind, but she hadn't given up the Firemind Code. It was the AI that controlled the Star Belt, a hidden network of weapons across the galaxy, powerful enough to obliterate Umbra's fleet. If Umbra got it, all hope would die. Yet Kalia clung to a faint spark: humans, the ones who never quit. A deafening explosion rocked the cell. The thick steel wall split open, black smoke pouring in like a tidal wave. Alarms blared, red lights flashing in the dark. Through the haze, a tall figure strode in, clad in silver-gray tactical armor streaked with blood-red lines. A plasma rifle hung across his shoulder, and his sharp blue eyes scanned the room before locking onto Kalia. "Dr. Kalia Vren?" he asked. "I'm Ethan Cole, Freedom Vanguard. Get ready to move, 'cause this place is about to go up in flames." Kalia blinked, fighting through the pain to focus. Before she could respond, Varkis charged, his energy sword blazing. Ethan moved like lightning, rolling to dodge, firing a burst of plasma rounds. 3 nearby enforcers dropped, smoke rising from holes in their armor. Varkis roared, leaping over a console, but Ethan slammed a boot into his knee, sending the Umbra commander crashing down. "No time for games, Doc," Ethan said, his fingers dancing over a wrist device. The energy cuffs around Kalia's wrists flickered out, and she collapsed to the floor, her legs trembling after days of suspension. Ethan caught her, his grip strong but gentle, like he was afraid of hurting her more. "Can you walk?" Kalia nodded, though every movement felt like tearing herself apart. "I'm Zoran born. I don't fall easy, human." She forced herself upright, her hand gripping his arm for balance. Ethan flashed a quick, vibrant grin. "That's the spirit. Let's haul ass before this dump turns to scrap." He pulled her out of the cell, rifle raised, eyes scanning the hallway bathed in the red glow of alarms. The corridors of Darkhold prison were a metal labyrinth, with hissing gas pipes like the breath of a giant beast. Ethan moved ahead, his steps precise, like a man who'd fought his whole life. Kalia stayed close, willing her exhausted body to keep up. She realized Ethan wasn't just some merc. He carried himself like someone who'd survived battles the galaxy had forgotten. She thought of her fallen colleagues, the sleepless nights in the lab, dreaming of a free galaxy. Ethan, with his scratched armor and steely gaze, seemed to carry that same dream. "Where's your ship?" Kalia asked, struggling to keep her breathing steady despite the pain in her chest. "Gray Flame, Cargo Bay 9, Ethan replied, checking a wrist-mounted tracker. "But first, we gotta get past a patrol." Umbra doesn't roll out the welcome mat for uninvited guests. He handed her a compact plasma pistol, its metal surface cool in her hand. Take this. You know how to use it? Kalia took the pistol, her hand trembling slightly but her eyes resolute. She ran her fingers along the barrel, recalling lab training sessions where she'd hit targets from 200 meters. I'm a scientist, not a soldier. But I've learned how to survive. She checked the weapon with swift precision, earning a raised eyebrow from Ethan. Note to self, don't piss you off, he said, peering around the corner. 6 goons up ahead, 2 heavy machine guns. Ready? Kalia nodded, gripping the pistol tightly. They burst from cover, Ethan leading, firing a salvo of plasma that tore through the air. 2 Umbra soldiers dropped instantly, but the others ducked behind crates, returning fire. Kalia aimed at one on the left, squeezing off 2 shots that hit dead on. Ethan rolled through an explosion, blasting a machine gun, which erupted in the gunner's hands. Smoke and sparks filled the hall, the ground shaking. Run! Ethan shouted, yanking Kalia toward a staircase to the cargo bay. The alarms grew frantic, and a robotic voice echoed. Reactor instability detected. All personnel, evacuate immediately. Kalia shot Ethan a stunned look. What did you do to the reactor? Ethan shrugged, a mischievous grin flickering. Might have slipped some nanobombs into the cooling system. Umbra's losing a warship factory today. There are 20,000 people in this place. Kalia gasped, panting as they ran. Not crazy, Ethan said, his eyes blazing with conviction. Umbra butchered civilians on 3 Alliance planets. This is justice, not madness. Cargo Bay 9 was a sprawling space, packed with metal crates and the roar of machinery. In the center stood the Grey Flame, a sleek, black-hulled ship, scarred from countless battles. It wasn't pretty, but it radiated the ferocity of a predator. Kalia eyed it, muttering, Looks like it's held together with duct tape and dreams. Ethan laughed, the sound cutting through the alarms. You're not wrong about the dreams, but Grey Flame has never let me down. Hop aboard, Doc. No time for sightseeing. They sprinted for the ship, but an Umbra squad burst through a side door, weapons raised. Ethan shoved Kalia behind a crate, firing with terrifying speed. Can you shoot? He asked, eyes locked on the enemy. Kalia clutched the pistol, taking a deep breath. I've shot targets in the lab. Never real people. Aim for the armor, Ethan said, dropping a soldier. They're not people, just Umbra's tools. Kalia nodded, targeting 2 on the right. 2 shots, 2 kills, as precise as her training. Ethan glanced at her, respect in his eyes. Second note, really don't piss you off. They scrambled onto the Grey Flame's ramp. Kalia punched in the code. Ethan barked. 4,478! The hatch slid open, and they dove inside. Ethan slid into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls, brushing back his messy brown hair, a nervous tic. Kalia strapped into the co-pilot's seat, watching screens light up with data. The engines roared, a defiant growl that challenged the galaxy. Varkis appeared at the bay door, his armor smoking from bullet wounds. Human! He bellowed, raising an energy rifle. You'll never escape, Umbra. We'll hunt you to the galaxy's edge. Ethan spun, flashing a cocky grin. Get in line, Varkis. Plenty of folks want my head first. He fired a shot into Varkis' shoulder, dropping him. The Grey Flame lifted off, hurtling toward the closing bay doors. They're shutting! Kalia yelled, pointing at the massive metal slabs. No sweat, Ethan said, hitting a button. 2 missiles streaked from the ship's nose, blasting the door mechanism, carving a narrow gap. The Grey Flame shot through, scraping the hull, but they were free, soaring into the endless void. Darkhold Prison loomed behind, a hulking fortress among the stars. But the danger wasn't over. 3 Umbra interceptors launched from a side bay, their engines blazing like hellfire. Kalia stared at the tactical screen, her heart pounding. They're on us. Can we outrun them? Not straight up, Ethan said, weaving the ship through a cosmic dust cloud. But I've got some tricks. Hold tight, Doc. He yanked the controls, the gray flame darting through a dense asteroid field, massive rocks spinning wildly. The interceptor stayed close, firing missiles that lit up the dark. Ethan deployed heat flares, luring 2 missiles into an asteroid, where they exploded in a fiery burst. But the third locked onto their heat signature. They've got a lock, Kalia said, gripping her seat. I got this, Ethan replied, cutting the main engines. The gray flame drifted on momentum, spinning to face the enemy. Kalia stared, wide-eyed. What are you doing? Fighting back, Ethan said, slamming a button. The forward cannons roared, shredding the lead interceptor's shields. It smashed into an asteroid, erupting into a fireball. The other 2 pressed on, but Ethan lured them deeper into the field, where collisions were constant. One interceptor was crushed trying to weave through. The last fired energy rounds, clipping the gray flame's left wing. The ship shuddered, alarms screaming. Shields at 40%. Kalia read off the display. Good enough, Ethan said, pulling a daring loop. He dropped a final flare, baiting a missile into an asteroid. The explosion lit up the void, and the last interceptor peeled off, retreating to Darkhold. As the gray flame cleared the asteroid field, space grew quiet, the engine's soft hum the only sound. Ethan engaged autopilot, leaning back, running a hand through his disheveled hair to shake off the tension. Kalia checked her wounds, using a medkit stashed under the seat. Bruises stood out starkly on her pale skin in the cabin's dim light. She paused, tracing an old scar on her arm, remembering lab days when she and her team dreamed of a free galaxy. A colleague once handed her a cup of synthetic coffee, joking it tasted like sewer water. But those moments made her feel part of something bigger. You okay? Ethan asked, swiveling to face her. Kalia nodded, wincing with each movement. I survived 5 days of Umbra's torture. A joyride like this won't take me out. She paused, studying him. What about you? Why risk your neck for me? The Alliance is dead. You don't owe me squat. Ethan stared into the black void, silent for a moment. I was an Alliance pilot, Hawk Squadron, he said finally. When Umbra torched my homeworld, I lost my family, my friends, the house I grew up in. My mom baked bread every Sunday, filled the place with that smell. Now all I remember is smoke when the planet burned. He gripped the controls, though the ship was on autopilot. I fight for people like you, folks who still believe in a better tomorrow. Kalia felt a warmth in her chest. She thought of her own sleepless nights, her colleagues who died protecting Firemind. Firemind isn't just an AI, she said. It controls the Star Belt, a weapon network that could wipe out Umbra's fleet. If they get it, it's game over. Ethan whistled, his eyes lighting up. So you've got the galaxy's fate in your head. No wonder Umbra's obsessed. He pulled a cloak and disguise kit from under the seat, handing them to her. But that silver hair and purple eyes make you a beacon. We need to blend in before we hit Outcast Station. Kalia took the cloak, offering a faint smile, feeling the rough fabric. You're prepared. Survival habit, Ethan said, turning away as she changed. You've got 10 minutes. Then we're diving into the next mess. Outcast Station loomed ahead, a jagged pile of metal, a chaotic jumble of modules and salvaged ship husks. Once a thriving trade hub, it was now a haven for outlaws. Ethan guided the gray flame into a cramped docking port, exchanging codes with the dockmaster. He threw on a civilian jacket to hide his armor, pulling the hood low over his face. This place ain't pretty, he said as they stepped off the ship. But it's neutral ground. Umbra's got no official pull here. What about unofficial? Kalia asked, tugging her hood to hide her dyed black hair. She felt the crowd's curious stares, like they knew she didn't belong. Umbra's got spies everywhere, Ethan admitted. But the station's boss, Lena Voss, doesn't take kindly to them meddling in her business. They entered the station's main hub, a maze of stalls, bars, and shadowy corridors. The air was thick with strange spices, machine oil, and the breath of a dozen species. Kalia stuck close to Ethan, her eyes wary. She spotted floating devices, Umbra's facial recognition drones, gliding through the crowd like predatory insects. "They're here," she whispered, pulling Ethan into a narrow alley, her heart racing. "Damn it," Ethan muttered, checking his comms. "Plans changed. We need a public terminal." They slipped through back corridors, dodging patrols, until they reached a row of info kiosks. Ethan slotted a credit chip, pulling up news feeds. The screen flashed a headline. "Terrorist attack destroys Darkhold prison. 20,000 casualties. 15 million credit bounty for culprits." Images appeared, a grainy security shot of Ethan during the rescue, and Kalia's portrait in her scientist's uniform, her gaze fierce. "Research facility," Kalia said, clenching her fists. "They're rewriting the truth." "It's worse," Ethan said, scrolling. "Umbra's declared martial law across 5 systems, using our attack as an excuse. They're tightening the noose." Kalia felt the blood drain from her face. "Zoran Prime's next. If they get Firemind." "They won't," Ethan cut in, yanking the chip. "We need someone who can help. Lena Voss is our best shot, but if she smells that bounty, we're screwed." They pressed on, weaving through darker corridors where lights flickered and the air grew heavy with metal tang. Ethan stopped at an old metal door marked with a broken star. He knocked a specific rhythm, and a scanner bathed him in blue light. "Identity confirmed, Ethan Cole," a synthetic voice said. "State your purpose." "Safe haven and intel," Ethan replied. "For me and a friend." The door slid open, revealing a room packed with screens, servers, and high-tech gear. At the center, an older woman with red hair and a mechanical arm worked at a holographic console. She looked up, her sharp green eyes sizing them up. "Ethan Cole," she said. "Knew you'd bring trouble." "Lena Voss," Ethan replied, grinning. "I came 'cause you're the only one I trust to stick it to Umbra." Lena's gaze shifted to Kalia, seeing through her dyed hair and disguised eyes. "Dr. Kalia Vren, right? Nice disguise, but I've seen the wanted posters. The whole galaxy's after you too." Kalia tensed, clutching her cloak, but Ethan rested a hand on her shoulder, a silent reassurance. "Lena was the Alliance's chief engineer," he said. "Now she runs the biggest underground intel network on the galaxy's edge." Lena pointed to screens showing Darkhold Prison's wreckage floating in space. "Your explosion hit Umbra hard, but they're hitting back. A fleet's heading for Zoran Prime. They want Firemind, and they'll level your planet to get it." Kalia's heart tightened, like an invisible hand was crushing it. "How long do we have?" 2 weeks if we're lucky," Lena said, pulling up a holographic galaxy map, planets and stars spinning in purple light. "But I've got something that might help." She held out a small, shimmering purple data crystal, heavy in her hand. "Access codes to the Exile Fleet, Alliance ships hiding in nebulas and dead space." Ethan studied the map, hope flickering in his eyes. "You mean the Hawk Nebula? I thought the fleet was wiped out." "Not quite," Lena said, zooming in on a blinking icon. "The unyielding, under Admiral Ria Salazar, is still kicking, though it's running on a skeleton crew and busted systems. They need a reason to rally." "That's you, Doc, and Firemind." Kalia shook her head, doubt in her eyes. "Rally a fleet just to get crushed by Umbra? That's not enough. We need a bigger play." Lena's smile was sly. "Exactly." She displayed a schematic of the Skybreaker, Umbra's flagship, a colossal ship bristling with thousands of guns that gleamed like dead stars. "This beast holds the automated control system for Umbra's fleet. Disable it, and their ships go haywire, relying on manual command, something Umbra's officers suck at." Ethan took the crystal, eyeing Lena. "Why risk this much?" Lena tapped her mechanical arm, its joints clicking. "Umbra took my crew, my planet, damn near my whole life. They think I'm just a washed-up engineer, but I've been waiting for this shot. I don't just want to see Umbra fall. I want to shove them off the cliff myself." As Ethan and Kalia left Lena's hideout, the data crystal safe in Ethan's pocket, they faced an impossible mission: infiltrate Umbra's mightiest warship, confront the fleet bearing down on Zoran Prime, and revive a shattered alliance. Kalia glanced at Ethan, seeing a fire in his eyes, the human spark that had kept her alive through her darkest days. She remembered a colleague who'd said humans were dangerous not for their strength, but because they never gave up, even when all seemed lost. Unbeknownst to them, at the edge of Outcast Station, an Umbra scout ship had picked up the Grey Flames trail. A hunt was beginning, with Kalia and the Firemind Code as the prize. Their journey was just starting, but the galaxy was about to witness the power of a human and a Zoran scientist, united against the universe's shadows. Kalia Vren sat in the cramped cockpit of the Grey Flame, clutching the data crystal Lena Voss had given her. Its purple glow danced across her pearlescent skin, highlighting bruises that hadn't yet faded. She stared out the forward viewport into the inky void, where stars twinkled like distant campfires. Outcast Station was now a faint speck behind them, but the weight of being hunted pressed down on her. The Umbra Corporation was on their tail, and the Firemind Code locked in her mind was the key to the galaxy's fate. Her thoughts drifted to Zoran Prime, her homeworld of glowing forests and cloud-skimming cities. If Umbra got there first, everything she loved would burn to ash. Ethan Cole lounged in the pilot's seat, hands flicking across the controls, checking their course to the Hawk Nebula. He ditched his tactical armor for a beat-up jacket streaked with oil stains. He ran a hand through his messy brown hair, a tic Kalia was starting to notice whenever he was on edge. "We'll hit the nebula in 3 days, barring any trouble," he said, eyes glued to the display. "But with Umbra, trouble's got a way of finding us." Kalia set the crystal on the console, her fingers brushing its cold surface. "Lena said the exile fleet's hiding there. But if they're just scraps, how do we take on the Skybreaker? That warship could wipe out an entire star system." Ethan swiveled his chair, locking eyes with her. "The fleet may be beat up, but the Unyielding is the toughest ship the Alliance ever built. If Admiral Salazar's still in command, we've got a shot. And with your Firemind, we can pull off miracles." He flashed a cocky but warm grin, like he'd faced impossible odds 100 times and lived to tell the tale. Kalia frowned, her violet eyes skeptical. "You believe in miracles, Ethan? After everything Umbra's done?" He went quiet, his gaze distant. "I didn't once. After my homeworld burned, I thought the galaxy was nothing but shadows. But then I met people like you, folks who keep fighting when it all seems hopeless. That's the miracle I believe in." He nodded at the crystal. "And that's our ticket to kicking Umbra's ass." A warmth stirred in Kalia's chest, but she shoved it aside. She couldn't afford feelings, not with Zoran Prime in the crosshairs. "So what's the plan? Find the fleet, activate Firemind, and infiltrate the Skybreaker? Sounds like a suicide run." Ethan let out a booming laugh that filled the cockpit. "Suicide's my day job, Doc. But we won't go it alone. Lena gave us coordinates for a contact in the nebula, a guy named Jackson Reed, ex-warship engineer. If anyone can get us to the Unyielding, it's him." Kalia nodded, but a heaviness lingered. She thought of her colleagues who'd died protecting Firemind, of late nights in the lab sharing bitter synthetic coffee and stories of family. One, Mira, had spoken of her young son, who loved drawing spaceships with colored pencils. Mira died when Umbra raided the lab. Kalia clenched her fists, vowing their deaths wouldn't be in vain. The Grey Flame glided through space, its engines humming like a quiet promise. But as they neared the Hawk Nebula, a warning blipped on the console. Ethan snapped upright, hands moving fast. "Umbra scout ships," he said, eyes narrowing. "They've got our scent." Kalia glanced at the screen, spotting 3 red dots closing in. "How'd they find us?" "Maybe drones at Outcast Station," Ethan said, flipping on electronic countermeasures. "Or Lena's not as trustworthy as I thought. Buckle up, Doc. It's gonna get bumpy." He yanked the controls, the gray flame weaving through a cosmic dust cloud, starlight bending into strange arcs. The scouts fired a salvo of missiles, their red glows slicing the dark. Ethan deployed heat flares, luring 2 missiles into a drifting rock, where they erupted. But the lead scout stuck tight, locking onto the gray flame's heat signature. Kalia gripped her seat, heart pounding. Can we shoot back? Sure, but that'd draw more heat, Ethan said, dodging an asteroid. Got a better idea. He hit a switch, and the ship spewed an ionized cloud, scrambling enemy radar. The scout slowed, losing the gray flame in the haze. Ethan steered deeper into the nebula, where swirling blue and purple gases churned like a cosmic storm. When the warning signal died, Kalia exhaled, realizing her hands were still clamped tight. How many times have you done this? Ethan shrugged, a playful smirk crossing his face. Lost count. But I haven't blown up yet, so you're in good hands. Kalia shook her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You're one crazy pilot. Crazy, but damn good. Ethan shot back, checking coordinates. We're almost at the rendezvous with Jackson Reed. Brace yourself, guys like him aren't exactly warm and fuzzy. The Hawk Nebula sprawled before them, a vast expanse of glowing gas hiding everything within. The gray flames slipped through swirling tendrils, purple and blue light bathing the hull like cosmic lanterns. Ethan guided the ship to a small space station, a patchwork of welded scrap. It had no name, just an eagle emblem etched on its hull. Ethan hailed the station, transmitting Lena's ID code. A gruff voice crackled back. Code verified. Dock at Bay 3. Don't do anything stupid. They landed in a cramped cargo bay, cluttered with metal crates and loose cables. As the ramp lowered, Kalia felt damp air heavy with the scent of metal and fuel. A tall man emerged from the shadows, wearing an oil-stained engineer's jumpsuit, a scar running from his eyebrow to his chin. Jackson Reed, Lena's contact, eyed them warily. Ethan Cole, Jackson said, arms crossed. Heard you blew up Darkhold Prison. Not bad, for a pilot the Alliance kicked to the curb. Ethan grinned, unfazed. And you're Jackson Reed, the guy who fixed warships with paper clips and prayers. Lena says you can get us to the Unyielding. Jackson's gaze shifted to Kalia, lingering on her dyed black hair and disguised eyes. Dr. Kalia Vren, Firemind's keeper. The galaxy's hunting you. Why should I risk my neck for you too? Kalia stepped forward, her eyes steady despite her aching body. Because if Umbra gets Firemind, they'll torch Soren Prime and every other planet after it. You were Alliance once. Don't you want to see Umbra burn? Jackson went silent, his gaze distant, like he was reliving old days. I watched the Alliance crumble, he said. I fixed their ships, bled for them, but they left us to die when Umbra hit. Now I survived by staying neutral. Ethan moved closer, his eyes sharp. Staying neutral's just siding with Umbra, Jackson. She's got the key to turn this war around. You wanna just survive, or leave a mark? Jackson studied Ethan, then Kalia, and finally nodded. Fine. But if we do this, I want a deal. When Umbra falls, I get a spot on Salazar's warship. Done, Ethan said, shaking Jackson's hand. Now get us to the Unyielding. Jackson led them through the station, a maze of narrow corridors and stuffy engine rooms. He stopped at a small bay where an aging shuttle, the Arrow, waited. This'll get us to the Unyielding, Jackson said, running a hand over its hull like an old friend. But the nebula's not safe. Umbra's got patrols, and there's rumors of something weird in the gas clouds. Weird how? Kalia asked, her hand brushing the crystal in her pocket. Jackson shrugged. Pilots vanishing, signals going haywire, feeling like you're being watched. Could be tall tales, but I don't take chances. Ethan clapped Jackson's shoulder. Good, 'cause taking chances is my gig. Let's roll, we ain't got time for ghost stories. The Arrow launched, diving deep into the Hawk Nebula. Swirling gas obscured everything, making Kalia feel like they were sailing through a dream. She sat beside Jackson in the cockpit while Ethan checked the weapons. Jackson shared stories of his Alliance days, fixing warships with nothing but tools and a pot of coffee. Kalia smiled, recalling lab nights fueled by synthetic brew and big dreams. Their reverie shattered when the warning blared again. Umbra patrol ships, Jackson said, hands flying over the controls. 3 of them locking on. Ethan vaulted into the gunner's seat, powering up the cannons. I'll handle the shooting, you handle the flying. Kalia, check the shields. Kalia nodded, her hands trembling as she keyed commands into the display. The arrow weaved through gas clouds, but the patrol stuck close, firing red energy bolts that sliced the nebula like knives. Ethan fired, a cannon blast shredding the lead ship's engine, sending it up in flames. The other two kept coming, their missiles streaking through the dark. Shields at 60%, Kalia reported, eyes fixed on the screen. We can't take much more. Get M into the interference zone, Ethan told Jackson. The nebula'll cover us. Jackson pushed the ship into a dense gas pocket, where radar scrambled and light warped. The patrols slowed, but a sudden blast rocked the arrow. We're hit, Jackson yelled. Cooling systems shot. Kalia glanced at Ethan, heart racing. Can we fix it? In this nebula? Only Jackson's that good, Ethan said, meeting Jackson's gaze. How far to the unyielding? Close, Jackson said, wrestling the controls through a gas vortex. But if the cooling's down, we'll blow before we get there. Kalia stood, ignoring the pain from old wounds. I'm a scientist. I can help. She bolted to the engine bay, Jackson's voice guiding her over comms. She pried open a panel, fingers weaving through scalding cables. The stench of burnt metal stung her nose, but she focused, recalling lab days spent jury-rigging equipment. She patched a leaking conduit, using a scrap of metal to block an energy flow. Done yet? Ethan asked over comms, as another blast shook the ship. Almost. Kalia shouted, hands shaking as she secured a cable. She reactivated the cooling system, and the engine's whine steadied. Nice work, Doc, Jackson said, pushing through a final gas cloud. Ahead, the unyielding emerged, a massive warship, its scarred hull radiating defiance. Faint lights flickered along its frame, a beacon in the dark. But the relief was fleeting. A new signal appeared on radar, not Umbra but something bigger, moving erratically. What the hell is that? Jackson asked, gripping the controls. Kalia stared at the screen, spotting a massive shadow in the nebula, like a predatory beast. That weird thing you mentioned, it's no rumor, she muttered. Ethan stood, his gaze icy. Whatever it is, it doesn't get to stop us. Jackson hailed the unyielding. Kalia, prep Firemind if we need it. We're not letting that thing or Umbra stand in our way. The unyielding answered, a woman's voice cutting through. This is Admiral Rhea Salazar. Identify yourselves now, or we open fire. Ethan grinned, hitting the comm. Admiral, Ethan Cole here, with Dr. Kalia Vran and Jackson Reed. We've got Lena Vasa's access codes and something to turn the tide against Umbra. Let us aboard, you won't regret it. A long pause, then Salazar replied. Dock at Base 7. If this is a trap, I'll personally toss you into the void. The arrow touched down in the unyielding's hangar, but the shadow in the nebula still moved, as if watching. A chill ran through Kalia, but she gripped the crystal, recalling a colleague's words. Humans are dangerous because they never quit. She glanced at Ethan, seeing the same fire that had pulled her through Darkhold prison. They stepped off the ramp, facing a squad of Alliance Marines with raised rifles and Admiral Salazar, a woman with salt and pepper hair and eyes hard as steel. Dr. Vran, Salazar said, sizing her up. Lena claims you carry Firemind. If that's true, you're our last hope. If not, none of you walk out alive. Kalia stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. I've got Firemind, and I'll prove it. But we need to move fast. Umbra's closing on Zoran Prime, and something's stalking us in the nebula. Salazar glanced at the hangar window, where the nebula churned like a storm. I know it, she said. We call it the Shade. It's not Umbra, but it's just as deadly. If you want my fleet to rally, give me a reason. Ethan met Salazar's gaze. Reasons we've got nothing left to lose. Umbra's taken too much, but we're still standing, still fighting. With Firemind and the Unyielding, we can make them pay. Salazar was silent, then nodded. All right. But first, we survived the nebula. The Shade has scrapped 3 of our ships. If it strikes, you prove your worth. Kalia's heart raced, but she looked at Ethan and Jackson, seeing their unshakable resolve. She thought of Zoran Prime's glowing forests, of Myra's son waiting for his mother. We'll survive, she said, clutching the crystal. And we'll fight. Kalia Vren stood in the command bay of the Unyielding, the Hawk Nebula's glow streaming through the massive viewport, bathing her pearlescent skin in a mystical purple hue. The data crystal in her hand pulsed with violet light, like a living heartbeat. The Firemind code in her mind, the AI controlling the Starbelt, was the last hope to save Zoran Prime and crush the Umbra Corporation. But a greater threat loomed. The Shade, a mysterious entity in the nebula, had obliterated 3 Alliance ships and was closing in. Ethan Cole stood beside her, hands stuffed in his oil-stained jacket, his sharp blue eyes scanning tactical displays. Jackson Reed, his face scarred from brow to chin, worked at a console, checking the Unyielding's weapons. Admiral Rhea Salazar, her salt and pepper hair tied back, commanded the center, her steel-hard gaze fixed on Kalia. Tension filled the bay, the hum of engines blending with the crew's steady breaths. Dr. Vren, Salazar said, arms crossed. You claim Firemind can activate the Starbelt. But we're trapped in this nebula with the Shade stalking us, and Umbra's fleet is bearing down on Zoran Prime. I need proof, now, or I won't risk my crew's lives. Kalia gripped the crystal, its coldness grounding her. She thought of Mira, her fallen colleague, and her son, who loved sketching spaceships with colored pencils. Taking a deep breath, her violet eyes resolute, she said, I'll activate part of Firemind to show you. But I need a secure terminal and time to link with the Starbelt. Salazar nodded, pointing to a corner. Use that console. If the Shade hits, we fight, with or without Firemind. Ethan rested a hand on Kalia's shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. You've got this, Doc. I've seen you fix an engine under fire. This is just a bigger lab. Kalia offered a faint smile, feeling warmth from his hand. A lab with thousands of lives on the line. She moved to the terminal, slotting the crystal in. The screen lit up, data flowing like a river of light. Her fingers danced across the keys, her mind locked on Firemind. She felt like she was back in her Zoran Prime lab, sharing bitter synthetic coffee with her team, dreaming of freedom. Jackson peered over her shoulder, curiosity in his eyes. You wrote that code solo? It's like art. Not solo, Kalia said, eyes on the screen. My team bled to protect it. I'm just the one who survived. Before Jackson could reply, a piercing screech erupted from the alert system. The tactical display showed a massive shadow moving through the nebula, larger than any ship, a writhing cloud of living metal with swirling energy tendrils. The Unyielding's crew tensed, some whispering prayers. Weapons hot. Salazar barked, striding to the main console. All energy cannons on standby. If that thing gets close, fire without hesitation. Ethan met Kalia's gaze, his face serious. How long? A few minutes, Kalia said, her hands trembling as she typed the final commands. But the Shade might not give us that. Jackson darted to another console, checking shields. Shields at 80%. If it hits, we'll take a few blows tops. The Shade surged forward, a tendril grazing the Unyielding's shields. The ship shuddered, lights flickering. Kalia clung to the console, heart pounding. She entered the last command, and the screen flashed. Starbelt connection established. Activating Firemind protocol. A blue glow erupted from the terminal, illuminating the bay. A holographic map appeared showing the Starbelt, thousands of hidden weapons satellites across the galaxy, primed to fire. The crew stared awestruck. Salazar stepped forward, hope in her eyes. You did it, Doctor. But the victory was brief. The Shade struck, its tendrils slamming the shields, tilting the Unyielding. Shields at 50%. Jackson yelled, rerouting power. Ethan vaulted into a gunner's seat, activating targeting systems. I'll keep it busy. Kalia, fire up the Starbelt. Kalia nodded, focusing on the hologram. She initiated activation, but Firemind demanded a verification code, A sequence only she knew. Closing her eyes, she recalled her final days in the lab, when Mira handed her the code before dying. "You're the only one I trust," Mira had said, her trembling hand in Kalia's. She entered the code, and the star belt began powering up, its satellites glowing on the map. Ethan fired, energy blasts tearing through the nebula, hitting the shade. It let out an otherworldly shriek and recoiled, but Kalia knew it'd return. "The star belt needs 10 minutes to lock targets," she told Salazar. "We have to hold out." Salazar nodded, her gaze unwavering. "We'll hold. Cole, keep shooting. Reed, stabilize shields. Crew, prep for full combat." The unyielding rocked as the shade struck again, tendrils breaching the shields, sparking explosions along the hull. Smoke filled the bay, but the crew held fast. Kalia glanced at Ethan, sweat dripping as he gripped the gun controls. She thought of their journey from Darkhold Prison, how he'd saved her not just with a rifle but with belief they could change the galaxy. "Shields at 20%, Jackson shouted, slamming the console. "We can't take more." Kalia checked the hologram. The star belt was nearly locked. 3 minutes, she said, hands shaking as she tweaked the final commands. But the shade didn't relent. A tendril pierced the shields, blasting an auxiliary engine. The unyielding lurched, and Kalia hit the floor, the crystal skittering away. Ethan rushed over, pulling her up. "You okay?" he asked, concern in his eyes. Kalia nodded, grabbing the crystal. "I have to finish. Buy me a little more time." Ethan grinned despite the chaos. "Remind me to ask for a raise after this." He returned to the guns, firing a barrage that slowed the shade. Jackson sprinted to the engine bay, tools in hand. "I'll fix the auxiliary," he yelled, diving into smoke-filled corridors. Kalia watched, knowing he was risking everything. She thought of Jackson's stories, fixing ships with paperclips and coffee, and hoped he'd pull it off again. The star belt was ready. Kalia entered the fire command, and the hologram showed thousands of satellites unleashing blue energy beams, targeting Umbra's fleet advancing on Zoran Prime. But the shade launched a final assault, its massive tendril crushing the unyielding's hull. Salazar fell, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead. Kalia clung to the console, inputting the last command. "Fire mines live! The starbelt's firing!" she shouted, eyes on the hologram. The beams tore through space, obliterating dozens of Umbra warships instantly. Their fleet descended into chaos, comms scrambled. But the shade tightened its grip, tendrils wrapping the unyielding. Kalia looked at Ethan, still firing despite overheating guns. "We have to do something," she said, desperation in her voice. Ethan glanced at Salazar, struggling to stand. "Admiral, take us into the nebula's core. If we go down, we take that thing with us." Salazar wiped blood from her face and nodded. "All power to engines. Brace for impact." The unyielding plunged into the nebula's dense core, where gas clouds churned. The shade followed, but the nebula's energy seemed to weaken it, as if reacting to the entity. Kalia checked the hologram. The star belt had nearly wiped out Umbra's fleet. She turned to Ethan, eyes alight. "We did it!" But a blast darkened the bay. When light returned, Ethan was on the floor, blood seeping from a shoulder wound. Kalia rushed to him, propping him up. "Ethan, stay with me! We need you!" Ethan's eyes fluttered open, a weak grin forming. "You worried about me, Doc?" He squeezed her hand, gaze steady. "Finish this." Kalia nodded, returning to the terminal. She channeled Starbelt's energy into an EMP, targeting the shade. The pulse erupted, and the entity shrieked, its tendrils disintegrating in the nebula. The unyielding broke free, but the ship was battered, engines smoking. Jackson staggered back, his jumpsuit streaked with blood and oil. "Auxiliaries up barely. Enough to limp to Zoran Prime." Salazar stood, renewed determination in her eyes. "We crushed Umbra's fleet and survived the shade. Dr. Vren, you kept your word." Kalia stared at the hologram, Umbra's fleet in tatters, survivors retreating. She thought of Zoran Prime's glowing forests, of Myra's sun. We're not done, she said. Umbra still has the skybreaker. If we don't take it out, they'll be back. Ethan, bandaged by a crewman, stood, resolve unbroken. Then we hit the skybreaker. I don't leave jobs half done. Jackson laughed, clapping Ethan's good shoulder. You're a man, Cole. Count me in. Salazar regarded them, respecting her gaze. The unyielding leads the charge. But we need a plan. Doctor, can you disable the skybreaker's control system? Kalia nodded, clutching the crystal. Firemind can do it, but I'll need to get deep inside. It'll be our toughest mission yet. Ethan's grin was pure defiance. Danger's my trade, Doc. Where you go, I go. They left the nebula, the unyielding at the head of a small Alliance fleet, bound for the skybreaker's coordinates. In a quiet moment, Kalia and Ethan sat in the mess hall, sharing a cup of synthetic coffee from the ship's dispenser. It was bitter, but Kalia smiled, recalling lab days. You know, Ethan said, eyeing her over the steam. When this is over, I want to try Zoran bread. Heard it beats my mom's. Kalia laughed, her first in days. If we survive, I'll bake it myself. The skybreaker loomed like a flying fortress, 10 times the unyielding size, its thousands of guns gleaming. The Alliance fleet engaged, drawing fire, while the gray flame, hastily patched by Jackson, carried Ethan, Kalia, and a small team to infiltrate the enemy ship. They slipped through metal corridors, dodging patrols, reaching the main control room. Kalia plugged the crystal into a terminal, accessing the skybreaker's systems. She worked fast, fingers flying, while Ethan and his team held the door, gunning down Umbra soldiers. A bullet grazed Kalia's shoulder, but she gritted her teeth, pressing on. Almost there! She shouted, as alarms wailed. Ethan dropped a soldier, glancing back. Hurry, Doc! We're running out of time! Kalia entered the final command, and Firemind unleashed a virus, crippling Umbra's fleet. Enemy ships stopped firing, drifting aimlessly. But the skybreaker's commander, in blazing red armor, burst in, energy swords swinging. Ethan shoved Kalia aside, blocking with his rifle, but was forced back. Kalia grabbed a pistol from the floor, aiming at the commander. Her shot hit his chest, dropping him. Ethan stared, stunned. Third reminder, never piss you off. Kalia's smile faded as the skybreaker shook. Self-destruct's active, she yelled, yanking the crystal free. We gotta go! They raced through collapsing corridors, Jackson clearing jammed doors with his tools. The gray flame waited in the hangar, and they piled in, Ethan piloting as the skybreaker exploded, its blaze lighting up space. The Alliance fleet cheered over comms, the unyielding leading the final sweep of Umbra's remnants. Zoran Prime was saved, and news of victory spread, rousing planets long oppressed by Umbra. On Zoran Prime, Kalia stood in a glowing forest, blue light from the trees dancing on her face. Ethan, his wounds healed, wore a simple shirt instead of armor. Jackson, now the Unyielding's chief engineer, tinkered with a nearby ship, cursing a loose cable. You owe me Zoran bread, Ethan said, eyes twinkling. Kalia grinned, handing him a warm loaf, its aroma filling the air. Try it. Might not beat your mom's, but I gave it my all. Ethan took a bite, chewing thoughtfully, then nodded. Not bad, Doc. Next time, add some butter. Their laughter echoed through the forest. Kalia looked to the sky, stars free of Umbra's shadow. She thought of Mira, her son, and those who'd fallen. She found the boy, giving him a spaceship sketch she'd kept from the lab, saying, Your mom would be proud. As you close the journey of Kalia Vren and Ethan Cole in light over darkness, I hope the stars of this galaxy have left their mark on you. Their story, a Zoran scientist carrying the Firemind code and a human pilot with an unbreakable spirit, isn't just a fight against Umbra or the shade in the nebula. It's proof of the power of belief, resilience, and bonds that transcend all barriers. From Darkhold Prison to the Unyielding, from Zoran Prime's glowing forests to the bitter tang of synthetic coffee, Kalia and Ethan showed us humanity's greatest strength lies not in weapons or tech, but in rising after every fall, in friendship, loyalty, and fierce hope for a better tomorrow. The story's deeper meaning lies in the HFY spirit. Humanity, though small in the vast cosmos, always defies the dark. Kalia, scarred by her past, carried her fallen colleagues' dreams. Ethan, who lost his home, fought for strangers. Jackson, a lone engineer, stood for something bigger. They remind us that, despite failure or pain, we can find light, not through individual might, but through connection with others. The lesson is clear: trust in your own strength, but never forget the power of teamwork. Like Kalia and Ethan hand in hand under Zoran's sky, we're stronger together against any challenge. This journey was born in quiet moments, when I wondered, what makes humanity special? The answer came in everyday things: a loaf of Zoran bread, a smile on the brink of death, a child's sketch of a ship waiting for his mom. But I need you, dear reader, to know if this story touched your heart. Did Kalia make you believe in resilience? Did Ethan's defiance make you laugh? Did the shades spark curiosity about the universe's mysteries? Share your thoughts, whether a whisper of awe or a quiet reflection. Your feedback is the spark guiding my next tales. Perhaps, like Kalia and Ethan, we're forging a bond, storyteller and reader, lighting stars in our shared imagination. Until we meet again, I leave you a question: if you held the Firemind code, what would you fight for?